Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Neug, and together with Franky, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now. Hello, welcome back everybody to the PSI Effect podcast. We are so happy that you are here to join us, and we want to welcome our seasoned audience and want to welcome those of you who are reaching out to us for the first time. And we have a very interesting show for you today. But before we jump into that, I want to make sure that I invite you to, on your favorite platforms to go ahead and like and subscribe and all those fun things that social media allows you to do. We really appreciate it, and it does help with the algorithm so that other folks can find us and we can spread some good news to them as well. So really appreciate all of your help and support to make this podcast possible. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Franky to tell us what's going on. Franky? Franky?
What we doing?
Oh,
What's going on?
Man, you're not out there?
I guess I was a little sleepy.
A long week, huh?
Oh, man, my bad. I guess that fits with what we're going to be talking about today, with kind of focusing on how sleep and making sure we have some regiment around our sleep patterns are going to help us with our comeback. So, my bad. Didn't mean to nod off like that. Hopefully the camera didn't catch my drool as it was coming down the side of my mouth there. Because that's the good nap.
That's going to be in the blooper reel too. Blooper reel too.
Right. I mean, you caught a good nap when you got to wake up and one, you don't know where you are. And two, you have to wipe your mouth because you just drooled all over yourself while you were sleeping.
Been there, done that.
But no, I'm doing well, man. It has been busy for sure. This past weekend, there was a lot of stuff going on. I celebrated a birthday, and then I also had a lot of work to do. I didn't really get to celebrate too much because I had to work the whole weekend. And it's interesting that, this topic came up for us to talk about today, because having to work through the weekend and work some longer than usual days definitely threw my sleeping patterns off, and I feel like I'm playing catch up.
Yeah, catch up. Wonder if we ever really catch up on sleep. I mean, that's a term that has been around for the ages. Need to catch up on some sleep, but I don't know if we ever really catch up on it.
I mean, every morning when my alarm clock goes off, I'm opening my eyes and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? It would feel great to just lay here and close my eyes a little bit longer, hit that snooze button a couple more times, and just stay here stuck in the bed. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if we can ever, do that catching up once we get behind, but I think getting into some patterns, and we'll get into that a little bit today, is something that's really important. One of the things that brought to mind when we decided about this topic, I was thinking about it today. It's like when I was raising my kids and how much of a game changer it was. And I still haven't decided if it was a game change for the positive or the negative when they got to the age that they stopped taking naps. So like they would sit there. Oh, I can tell you're sleepy. Let's just sit still for a minute. And they would fight sleep. It was like, I was like, no, if I go to sleep, if I close my eyes, I'm going to miss something. If I close my eyes, I'm going to waste this fleeting time that I have. I refuse to succumb to sleep's grip. And it, when they got into that mode, it was a game changer because, they started acting like grown-ups, or at least they thought they did. So they didn't get enough sleep. They'd be grumpy and all that other good stuff. So yeah, that was one of the things that kind of flashed in my mind as we were preparing for the episode today.
Well, I ain't mad at them for the nap because, I can use a good nap. I could definitely use a good nap. I don't get very many of them these days, but every now and again, I will get, even if it's only for about 20 minutes, I tell you that just works for me sometimes. So
I don't know, Nuge. I guess I'm a little bit different because typically if I take a nap, it jacks up my sleep for the night. And if I only get 20 minutes, I'm waking up like the Black Hulk, and you don't want to see me angry.
Oh, that's funny. I have to ask your boys to take a video of that sometime. Look here. So,
That's not
so let's
that's not safe for work viewing.
let's jump into it. So, you know, I just wonder how many folks in our audience will be honest about, um, the habit of revenge sleep. That revenge sleep is where you're exhausted. You say you're gonna go to bed at 10. Before you know it, it's like 12, 12:30. Um, and then you're just, watching videos of whatever on
Mm,
YouTube and so forth. You're playing games, you're doom scrolling, like all kinds of things, right? Well, we say we're going to go to bed, and we say we're going to go to sleep, and we end up, with some of those things going on. And, I guess the question is, why do we sabotage the one thing that is going to make tomorrow better, make it easier, right? If we're
mm,
well rested, like why do we engage in those practices if we know that that's going to affect us in the morning? Just like you said, you like to roll over and hit that snooze,
for sure.
um, which is probably not the greatest invention. I mean, God bless the guy that or the woman who invented it, but probably not the greatest invention for some of us.
Yeah, the snooze button is a double-edged sword for sure. But why do we do it? I mean, I don't know. I think for some people, myself included, there's a period in my life where I just did not prioritize rest. It's like I got so many other things that I want to do. Sleep is the thing that I'm willing to sacrifice, and after a while, I fell into that vicious cycle and my body was like, nope, you're going to sit your butt down and rest right now, and eventually we get to that point. So a lot of it for me seems like people may not just be giving it the priority that it deserves. And that's the thing that's the easiest to sacrifice when you feel like you got so much going on.
I think you're right about that. When you say easy to sacrifice, I think that we do that without even really thinking about it, because there's just that one other thing that we need to do or want to do, or something like that, and we can just say, well, you know, I'll go to bed in another 30 minutes. It won't be that bad. You're looking at the clock, you're looking at your watch, it's going, yeah, I can get 4 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep or whatever it
Mm.
is. And it is very easy to sacrifice that sleep, because I am very guilty of having done that.
Yeah. I'm curious though, why is it called revenge sleep?
Um, I don't know why it's called revenge sleep. Actually, you know what? I did do a little research on that. Let me just pull this up here, because I did ask my dear friend earlier, and it went away. Oh, I didn't hear this. It doesn't say why it's called that. It just says what it is.
Hmm. Interesting. I don't know. That terminology is
Um,
interesting to me. It's like maybe it's like, all right, well, you've put sleep off for so long, and finally sleep is going to have its revenge and sit you down. That's what that sounds like to me. But that's me being a little nutty in my imagination.
well, since you said that, um, I'm just pumping that in here, and we're going to see what it's going to give us. You're going to see what it's going to give us here, and I'll tell you why it's called revenge sleep. Because it is a often subconscious attempt to take back control in personal time from a stressful, busy, or overwhelming daytime schedule.
Interesting. Hmm. That definitely sets up the vision of that vicious cycle that I kind of alluded to earlier, right? Where and quite honestly, I actually saw this manifest with my youngest son earlier this week. Yep, it was earlier this week, where stressful day, super worn out from school and practice and things like that. Comes home, it's already late because we had, my oldest son had an athletic competition, he had a lacrosse game, and we were late getting home from that. And my youngest is like, I'm super tired, but I feel like I need to unwind. I want to play video games for a little while or get some screen time for a little while. So he ends up staying up past his bedtime. Had a rough day, felt like he needed to unwind, stayed up past his usual bedtime, was dragging ass in the morning when it was time to get up. And then that rolled right into another not so great day because he didn't get sleep. And it's just that rinse and repeat cycle.
Well, the Centers for Disease Control says that 1 in 3 adults aren't getting enough sleep. So if 1 in 3 adults are not getting enough sleep, it's probably it's probably less for some teenagers than young adults because they just have so much going on, right? And
Right.
they suggest, of course, that most adults get between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And I just wonder how many people in our audience are getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep consistently on a
Mm.
nightly basis. I can't say for sure that I would be one of those adults that gets that 7 to 9 hours consistently. And I think I celebrate it sometimes when I can get, 8 hours of sleep.
I mean, it makes a difference. I too am in that same boat. I don't get that much sleep, that amount of sleep on a regular basis. It's always something, again, feel like it's always something. Oh, I got to handle this one last little thing. I got this other thing I need to handle. Got a late night game with the boys with one of their athletic competitions. So, I mean, you made the statement, why, or the question, why would someone sabotage, their next day or their tomorrow? I think some people, like we said, it goes back. I don't think people see the value of what sleep brings to them for setting up the next day. And I think it's important. Can you talk a little bit about how sleep factors into our PSI framework and why it's important in the scope of, what we talk about here on the podcast?
Well, I think that, first and foremost, we create a new normal for ourselves when we don't get the recommended amount of sleep. Um, we end up with 4 hours of sleep every night, and that's just normal for us anymore. And we're exhausted, and sometimes we don't even notice how exhausted we are. And so, um, I think that how it fits into the framework is just thinking about your overall personal health first and foremost, because sleep I think has a lot to do with your caring for yourself, self-love, right, self-help for you, right, that personal touch that you have for yourself. I think that pausing to think about how much sleep you're getting, or actually considering your personality shifts throughout the day, and maybe attributing that to not getting enough sleep. And I don't know that we do enough of that type of introspection. I think that things in our day happen, and we just kind of roll with it. We roll with it. We roll with it. And
Hmm.
we don't even think about the fact that we didn't get very good sleep the night before as a contributor to how we're performing or how we're acting, today. And so, asking ourselves, are you actually tired or just used to being tired, right?
Mm.
Um, and taking that pause and having some reflection on that in and of itself, and just making a mental note of your disposition.
Are you actually tired or just used to being tired? That's an interesting way to put it. I guess that kind of goes back to what you were saying about if we get into this cycle, we create this new normal. It's like, oh, well, I'm just going to always be tired. Again, I think that we devalue what proper sleep does for us. Part of that devaluation, I have to go ahead and say it, has to do with the world's favorite drug, caffeine.
Mm,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I don't have to get all the sleep. Just let me get my cup of coffee in the morning and I'm good to go. Oh man, the
What a
fallacies
crutch
that,
that coffee is.
whoo, man, yeah. I mean, shoot, I have to use it as a crutch to do push-ups, as do you. So,
Yes, that is so true. That is
mm.
so true. But yeah,
But
so go ahead.
I was just gonna just say another reason why I think we don't give sleep the priority it deserves is I don't think a lot of times we stop to really think about why we need sleep. Like
Mm.
why do humans have to sleep? Everybody always likes to make comparisons. Oh yeah, your brain's like a computer. Well, computers don't necessarily have to sleep. They can stay on all the time. What is it about sleep that makes it a necessity for us?
Well, as does your brain does stay on all the time, because it's been proven through sleep study that your brain actually does function while you're sleeping. So I guess to some degree, that phrase is accurate, it doesn't necessarily help us much because we can't function in the manner that a computer functions. But, I think there's a lot of factors as to why we don't get the recommended sleep. And I think one of those factors is stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, I think that keeps us up at night, or some of us up at night. And I think that um, is also a contributor to why we stay up and we scroll or we watch YouTube videos because we're just trying to find uh, a place where we feel like we can relax. I mean, we feel like playing those games late at night or the doom scroll is making us relax when in actuality it's just creating more of a situation, creating or building on that habit of poor sleep habits to keep us up, keep us awake.
Gotcha. I was doing a little bit of reading beforehand too, and I was curious as to, what's happening in our body as we're sleeping. And that gave me a little bit of insight as to, why it's so important. That's when we're sleeping and we get to that level of deep sleep and we get enough sleep, that's basically our body's time to repair itself. We can heal all the time, but, like tissue repair, from a neurological perspective, consolidation of our memories. You think about all the data that we take in over the course of the day. Our brain has to sort and file and do all this other stuff to create long-term memories. That happens while we sleep. Our immune system gets boosted and maintained while we're asleep. Think processes happen to remove neurotoxins. So the thing that it really made me think of, and I don't know how many people in our audience are maybe old enough to remember having to do this process. It's like when you used to have to defragment the hard drive on your computer.
Right.
Um, for those who may not know, you have a hard drive on a computer and it used to be these spinning platters. And as those platters would spin, sometimes your data would just get spread all across there. And if it got too fragmented, it would slow down the computer because it had to search for the pieces of the information to put it all together. So you ran a defragment routine and that would consolidate all the data to make it easier to retrieve and make it so that you could be more efficient with your machine. And that's how I view sleep for us, is that it's kind of like the defragment cycle for our bodies and our minds.
Yeah, I agree. I know that sleep is a contributor to clear thought, and sleep is a contributor to overall better health. And so when you talk about that whole repairing process when you're sleeping, it makes a whole lot of sense because you just can't do that thing when you're moving at whatever speed that you move during the day. Some days faster than others, for sure. You can't do that. Your mind is really focused on other things. But when your body is at rest, when your mind is, even though it's still, moving, your mind is still functioning. It is somewhat at rest when you're sleeping, and so you can just kind of have that, repair cycle, helping you with your overall health. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. And I don't know that enough of us really think about when we're sleeping that we're actually aspects of our mind and body. I think we just kind of take for granted that we go to bed, we go to sleep 6, 7 hours or whatever it is, and we get up and we just keep it moving. Think about
Hmm.
the benefits of that time that we spend sleeping, and you know help. I mentioned stress earlier. Sleep, I believe, helps us to reduce that stress. It helps us to um, really relax more so than playing that game before we get into bed.
Hmm.
So I don't know that enough of us really consider that aspect of it. And it's said that adults pretty much after the age of about 17, that 9 to 10 hours of sleep is what's recommended, right? At least 7 hours, right? But adults probably get between 7 and 8, 7 and 9. Most adults probably get a lot less than that. I do.
Hmm.
I can't say I get 7 hours of sleep every night. Some nights I get 4.
Man, it's just talking about that whole repair and maintenance mode. The analogy I think of is, if you have a problem with your car and you got to work on the engine, you're not going to work on the engine while it's running. You're going to have the engine turned off so you can do that repair work. And that's the
But,
that's the visual I get.
when you say that, a lot of us wait. You think, okay, the car's going along. It's like, okay, I'll get it on Friday or I'll get it on Saturday or whatever. And then before you know it, you got a problem with your car that's a lot bigger than you anticipated. And I think the whole sleep thing is the same way, right? If you keep putting it off, eventually you run into a situation where you're just unhealthy, whether it's a cold, flu, or any number of things, and we put it off very subconsciously, I think. But when it catches up, what's the first thing you want to do when you don't feel good?
You
Well,
want
lay
to go to
down
sleep.
and you want to go to sleep,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So, um, so I think we just need to take stock of what we what we value in that whole rest cycle, and sleep. I think should be at the top of the list because it has a lot of benefits that I think that we just take for granted. So we've already so now we go through and we do this inventory of our sleep habits and what have you. And so now, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? And I'm gonna pose that question to you first. Like, what do you do? How do you engage in good sleep habits?
I mean, it has to be deliberate. Just like anything that we've talked about in the pause, shift, and ignite framework, it has to be deliberate. We have to first recognize that it's something that is of value to us and our overall health and the overall achievement of our objectives. So if we give it that proper priority, that makes it, first of all, that makes it easier to devote the effort and the intentionality that it needs in order for us to get it done. So being intentional is first. And, you know, kind of looking back to what we talked about in our New Year's episode. If anybody in the audience hasn't heard that episode, go back and listen to it, because we talk about SMART goals. And I think sleep could be one of those things that you could easily form a SMART goal around, where you can track specific data points to kind of hold yourself accountable to how much sleep you're actually getting. Are you putting in the work to get the sleep that you need? Are you setting yourself up with good habits to get yourself ready to wind down? I mean, those are all great places to start.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you said doing the work. And so I think that we need to consider what is that work for each one of us. And I know for me, I like my room dark. Like, my room is so dark when I go to sleep, I could stump my toe at night if I didn't know my way around my house. Um, and I like it dark, which is why I don't have a television in my bedroom.
Mm.
I realized a while ago that having a television in my bedroom was affecting how I was sleeping, which was affecting how I was, um, you know, acting, responding daily. And so when I took that TV out of my bedroom, I realized that that was one of the contributing factors for me not getting the rest that I needed. Family and friends talk about me. You don't have a TV in your room, you sleep. No, sir, no, ma'am. And as a contrast to that, many people on this podcast or listening to this podcast know folks who say, I got to have the TV on so I can go to sleep. I mean, that is a phenomenon that I just cannot understand.
As- so I'm raising my hand, for folks that are not watching us on YouTube, I'm raising my hand here, not because I fall into that category, but I happen to have married somebody who falls into that category. And my wife, her has to have the TV on when it's time for bed. And I'm like you, Nuge. I need darkness and quiet. I've kind of conditioned myself to be able to, deal with the volume, because, we can at least agree that the volume has to be really, really low. But I actually had to invest in getting a sleep mask to, cover over my eyes, just so I wouldn't be disturbed by the flashing lights from the TV. So I had to, and for some people who need it dark, I mean, their environment may not lend itself to, getting darkness in the room. You're staying somewhere, a bunch of street lights outside, or heaven forbid, you're working like a third shift job where you actually work through the night and you have to sleep during the day. You have to figure out some different strategies.
You are right, because part of my work life caused me to travel. And so I was not in my room at every night. And you're 100% correct. Some of those hotel rooms, the curtains don't draw all the way and the lights coming in. And then you have, neighbors in the hotel that don't keep the same sleep hours that you keep.
That's a
And
nice way to put
so
it.
and so, you're right. There are some challenges there and some things that you have to work through. But kudos to you for sleep mask and the other things that you have done to get sleep. I just you just don't get the quality sleep if there are things that are interfering with that. And I say that, or you say that, and one of the statistics that I found when I was looking up information for this podcast is that women generally get more sleep than men. This is research indicates, and this is 2026 research, and that 32% of women get 8 or more hours of sleep compared to only 22% of men. However, men report feeling more rested overall. What do you think about that?
That sounds like some stretching of the truth there. Right? It does. It sounds like stretching of the truth. And not. I'm not trying to say that women don't get more sleep than men. Um, I'm curious as to what the researchers surmise is the reason for a difference across gender lines,
Mm.
but from men saying that they're acknowledging that they're not getting as much rest, but then saying they feel rested, that sounds like some ego stuff to me. It's like, I'm aware this. I'll go into work and I was like, yeah, I was out till 2 a.m, but it's 7 a.m. and I'm here at work, ready to go. Let's go. You kind of wear your sleep deprivation as a badge of honor or a badge of accomplishment. So yeah, I think there might be I might want to call shenanigans on some of those statistics there.
I found that interesting, and also they say that you sleep better in winter than you do in summer. You sleep longer by only a few minutes, but I guess they say the days are longer in the winter than they are in the summer. And of course, daylight savings time for those of us who have to deal with that affects your sleep as well.
I am
Just that
not looking
whole
forward to that.
change. Yeah, just that whole change. Just that
Mm.
the whole change. There are a lot of factors that go into the why. But as you said, you have to be intentional. You have to manage your habits and what works for you. You found that you needed a mask to help you because your lovely wife um, likes the TV on at night, and so y'all make it work. And so you have to do things like that to figure out what really makes sense for you. But I think the important thing is you've got to try to get as much sleep as you possibly can, because whether you realize it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, the lack of sleep is a contributor to your disposition from day to day. It's a contributor to your contribution in what you're doing from day to day. And it is a contributor to you being, safe or unsafe. I mean, think about it. If you're going a week or two every night only getting 3 4 hours of sleep, you probably aren't the safest driver. You probably aren't the safest forklift operator. You probably aren't the safest whatever, right?
Right.
So those things are contributors to those types of behaviors.
Yeah. And, you know, talking about that, those behaviors, we alluded to it again at the top of the conversation about, you know, what we're like when we don't have enough rest in our system. Um, so I need a little bit of insight news because we've been doing this podcast together for a while, and we work together. Sometimes we're up later at night working on some of this stuff. How will I know that Nuge is on the teetering on the edge of not having enough rest. How does that manifest for you? What do you see in your, what are the things that you recognize in yourself that are going on when you don't have enough rest? How does that manifest?
Well, for one, when I'm sitting here at this computer and I'm doing research or I'm doing whatever, and that you get that, we used to call it the old folk syndrome.
Get that nod.
I probably shouldn't say that at this point, but the head goes to nodding, right?
Yeah.
And then just irritability. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm a bit irritable, and I recognize that. And so, fortunately, I can go off and chill somewhere, not necessarily go to sleep, but I don't have to be around people to where that irritability is affecting other people. But I know for myself that I get irritable, and so um, those are two very tall tale signs. And fortunately, if I'm driving or what have you, I haven't had that experience. But I know that there's some folks in the audience who drive and find themselves, nodding here and there, and which is not safe. And so I think that's something that you need to really consider. Like I said, for me, I'm not out driving, but the nod will come if I'm sitting here, especially if I'm sitting here for too long, doing the same work, staring at this computer, doing whatever I'm doing. What about for you?
For me, it's almost like it's like my filter wears very thin. The irritability, yes, but I think the irritability manifests in my filter. I'm not talking about wearing a mask, but sometimes, there are emotional things that we respond emotionally to certain stimuli, and then we're able to rationalize things before we react or speak and things like that. And what I find is that when I'm not well rested, my capability of intercepting that emotional response before I can rationalize it is diminished, so
Mm,
that it's more likely that that raw emotional response is going to be what pops to the surface,
mm.
instead of me being able to deal with it. And, it's
Tell the boys to run and hide on those days.
uh, no, that's just when, the boys don't run and hide, but that's when dad just goes outside and does yard work, or, just
Mm.
spend some time just sitting outside and relaxing as much as possible. But, um, it kind of ties back to this notion of behavioral economics. We've referenced it a couple of times on the podcast where, we've got these two parts of our brain. We've got the limbic system, which is our fast part of our brain. That's where emotion and intuition live. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is very deliberate, very effortful, but that's where rationality lives. And when we don't sleep, that emotional part of our brain gets much louder. And that
Mm,
rational part of our brain, which takes more effort to engage, is
mm,
slower and then
mm.
somewhat quieter. And I think that's what I'm experiencing. Just kind of looking back on what I just described. That's what's going on with me, is that emotional center is firing boom, 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 but my rational side is not fast enough to keep up because I'm sleep deprived.
Well, here's the good news, Frankie. There's a lot of smart watches out there, and technology that you can actually track your sleep. You can track your sleep like you track how many miles you run every day. And so I would encourage our audience to maybe try that. And I have started doing that myself. I like getting up in the morning and seeing that I have slept more than 6 hours. That is kind of my threshold. If I can get more than 6 hours, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And Lord, if I get 8, I'm pretty excited. But the sleep trackers help you with that, and they even go so far to tell you what type of sleep you're getting. If you're getting a deep sleep, if you're getting, the what they call the deep sleep, the core sleep,
Mm-hmm.
the REM sleep, and they even track how long you're awake. If you have a certain time set throughout the night that you want to be asleep. There's timers that tell you, okay, you set this timer that you need to be in a bed, right?
Right.
So there's all kinds of technology to help you with um, creating better habits to take better care of yourself. And that's what it's really all about, right, Frankie? It's like taking better care of yourself so that you can then in turn be the person or perform as the person that you want to be or be at your peak performance whatever that may be on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, the old saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. If your cup is empty, there's nothing to pour out, to share with others, to make the world a better place, to try to chase after your goals. So sleep is one of those pivotal pieces of filling up our cup. If we're not getting the sleep that we need, we're not going to be able to make that legendary comeback. We're not going to be able to rise on purpose. You know, we talked about the rat race recently with Kyle on the show. If we're just caught up in that and we're just constantly on that wheel, you know, we're not going to make progress. We're not going to get where we need to be. We're going to burn ourselves out. So we have got to take care of, prioritize, and be intentional about taking care of ourselves. And I think it's interesting, you know, you talked about technology. Sometimes technology is the biggest detractor of our sleep. But if we intentionally, you know, make technology work for us, there's lots of tools available to help us get those better habits going, to give us data that we can measure for our smart sleep goals.
That's right. And you know, that will give us data. Then we have to actually use the data, right? You can't just get the data and say, well, we have to actually use it. And then there's other things that I think that we need to do. Like, you know, I think we moved into the whole ignition phase of what we talk about, but you know, pick a time that's right for you to go to sleep consistently and try to stick to that. If you say you're going to be in the bed by 9 o'clock, try to be in the bed by 9 o'clock. Not in the bed. I'm going to say this. Maybe, please, hopefully your wife's not listening. Not to lay in the bed and watch TV.
You know she's going to see this episode of the podcast and she's going to call you.
She's going to see it, right? She's going to give me a call. But, you know, TV or playing games, you know, as you said, Frankie, that technology could be a detriment to your sleep habit. But find the thing that's right for you. Pick the time that's right for you to go to sleep and try to achieve that time every night. And I have a time that I set for myself and I'm working toward it. But find some things, you know, we talk about habits, find some habits that you can stack to put you in position to go to sleep. And one of my habits that I'm working on is reading 30 minutes before bed. Because I know, I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, if I'm in a bed and I'm reading, I'm probably going to fall asleep. That is generally not the place that, if I want to really consume something to read really well, I'm not going to do it in bed because I'm going to fall asleep. Reading 30 minutes before bed, I know is going to make me sleepy. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. Change your room around if you need to. Get room darkening curtains or blinds or shades or whatever they have for you. And if you're somebody who loves the snooze on the alarm clock, and we're all guilty, I can raise my hand to it too. Maybe you have your alarm clock in a different location so that you are forced to get up. You know, moving a telephone, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So when you talk about putting the alarm clock on the other side of the room, it made me think for Christmas 2 years ago, I bought my oldest son an alarm clock because he was having trouble getting out of bed. And this particular alarm clock was obnoxiously loud. I mean, it sounded like the klaxon that would be blaring if a nuclear reactor was melting down. All right, so you just envision that. So with that if it was sitting beside the bed, as loud as it could be, you still fall into the habit of, oh, I can just reach over and hit the snooze button. This alarm clock had wheels. So, like big wheels. So as soon as it started going off, it would take off and just try to run. It would be moving around the room as the alarm is going off. So he would have to wake up and have to catch the alarm clock to turn the alarm off. And he absolutely hated that thing. I think he broke it intentionally, but that's another story.
I think that's genius, actually.
I mean, shoot, if you're talking about your phone, even if you want to set your phone by your bed, there are alarm clock apps on your phone. One of my coworkers used to do this. He had an app. It was an alarm clock app. And in order to stop the alarm from going off, you had to solve a math problem on your phone. So you had to wake up and be alert enough to solve a math problem on the phone to get the alarm to shut down.
I think that's not fair. I think that's not fair. I mean, you got to wake up in the morning to figure out X squared minus Y. I mean, come on, man. That's not cool.
Got to
I
build
mean,
those
some days
muscles,
that's
got to
not
build
cool
those
with your
habits.
eyes open, you're fully awake, you know?
Sure. But I mean,
Oh, goodness.
it all speaks back to the intentionality that we talked about. Just like
Sure.
everything else on our comeback journey, we have to be very intentional about our sleep, because our sleep is what gives us our recharge. It's what repairs us. It what prepares us for the next day. Um, yeah, sleep is a crucial part of the equation that we don't talk much about. But if we want to experience that legendary comeback, it's something that we have to prioritize.
Prioritize it. And hey, listen, use your journal too. Journal how much sleep you're getting at night and compare that to the journaling that you do and your, behaviors and the actions that you take and so forth. That could also be a manner to help you determine if you're getting enough sleep or if sleep is really what's affecting, what's happening to you on a daily basis. So, and again, this whole conversation has really been about, caring for yourself, right? Loving yourself and caring for yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, as Frankie alluded to earlier, if you don't take care of that vehicle, then sooner or later, that vehicle is going to leave you stranded in some shape, form, or fashion. And sleep is the same way. Whether that strand is, a health problem or whether that strand is a behavioral problem, it can strand you.
We can't overstate how important sleep is. Like you said, um, you mentioned a book in our previous conversation by Matthew Walker, I think it was, that said something about, the shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. And that
Mm-hmm.
just should drive home for us how important sleep is. The shorter our sleep, the shorter our lives. If we want to maximize our lives, we have to prioritize sleep.
Good sleep helps you handle a lot of different things. So just keep that in mind as you work through. So, Frankie, what should we challenge our audience with?
So, start this week off by trying to keep track of how much you're sleeping. Do it for a week. It could be in your journal. You could use it on your notes on your phone, but just track how much sleep you're getting for 7 days. And at the end of that 7 days, review it. Do you think that you're getting enough based off of the suggested amounts of sleep an adult should be getting? How did you act during the day? Pause and reflect. And then after you pause and reflect, think about one thing that you could change to improve the amount of sleep you're getting, and then record for another 7 days. At the end of that 7 days, do the same rinse and repeat, plan, do, check, adjust. We make a plan, we do it, we check the results, and then we adjust our approach for the next iteration of the cycle. I think we should challenge our audience to approach monitoring their sleep in that fashion.
Sounds like a good plan. So the challenge is on, folks. Hopefully, what was it? Mission Impossible. Should you decide to accept it?
Yeah, but this podcast is not going to self-destruct in 10 seconds, though. So
it is not. But yeah, I think that's a good challenge. And just thinking about how you're acting today or how you're performing today, and just tying that back to if you got enough rest first and foremost. It could be a number of other reasons too, but use it as well to consider if your body is if you're taking care of your body. Okay, because we love you. We want to see you back here. Every time that we have an episode, so take good care of yourself so that you can take good care of others in your life. All right. Well, before we take off here, I think we're at the end of this episode. I hope you got a little something out of this. Hopefully, maybe you even got a laugh or two along the way. But Frankie, tell our audience where they can find us and listen to future episodes as well as past episodes.
You got it. So for all things PSI Effect podcast related, go to our website. This is psipod.com. There you'll find a link to all of our episodes and all the various podcast platforms where we are available in the audio format. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any episodes. You can also find us on YouTube. If you want to see the full video episodes, you can search the PSI Effect podcast or find us at our social media handle at This Is PSI Pod. So follow and subscribe on YouTube as well. Don't forget about Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. You can find us on all those at our handle at This Is PSI Pod. We'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. So you have no excuse. You can find us everywhere. And you have no excuse. Get some good sleep.
Yeah, I'm going to go take a nap.
I'm going to take a nap. That's right. So until next time, remember that setbacks are temporary. Comebacks are legendary. Until we meet again, be brave and rise on purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.